For 3 years after I was paralyzed, my CEO wife, Victoria Johnson, took care of me without ever leaving my side. When I was thirsty, she'd cool the water to the perfect temperature before bringing it to my lips. Knowing I liked to be clean, she would meticulously wash my body. Because of my weak constitution, she would give me physical therapy and massages, enduring her own tendinitis. Everyone said I was holding her back, that the untouchable beauty of the Johnson Group was inexplicably devoted to me. She didn't even go see her first love, the one that got away, when he was critically ill. After 3 years of rehabilitation, I finally stood on my own 2 feet again. My wife, who always presented a cold and elegant face to the world, actually smiled. She paid a fortune at auction for a legendary centennial blood ginseng to replenish my vitality. But I wasn't grateful. Instead, in front of all our friends and family, I demanded a divorce. Everyone was stunned. My wife's eyes reddened, and she bit her lip. "You are the man I, Victoria Johnson, chose. You will not leave me, unless I die." Hearing this, I sneered and shoved her down the stairs. "You want to die? Then let me help you." Unfortunately, the stairs weren't that high. After a thorough checkup revealed no injuries, our worried friends and family brought her to a hospital room. "Sincere, what the hell has gotten into you?" Victoria frowned at me, her tone furious. "Even if you're upset about something, we're a married couple, we can communicate. What is this nonsense about divorce?" Our friends and family were just as confused. Director Helen from the orphanage where I grew up rushed to take Victoria's hand. "Vicky, please don't be upset. We've all seen your devotion these past 3 years. How could Sincere possibly divorce you?" "Mama Helen, I'm serious. I want a divorce." Seeing the grave look on my face, the director was torn, stamping her foot in anxiety. Victoria's chest heaved with anger, her face flushing red. "Sincere Smith, I'm getting angry. What do you think marriage is, a game of playing house? Are you upset because I haven't been here to keep you company for the last 2 days? I can explain. I postponed a shareholder meeting and went to a remote monastery to find a special dietary recipe for you." I shook my head, cutting her off as I pulled out a divorce agreement. "No need to explain. Right now, all I want is a divorce. Just sign it." "Don't you dare sign it." Director Helen snatched the papers from my hand. "Sincere, have you lost your mind? Vicky is so busy with work, yet she still cooked for you and brought it to the hospital every single day. Where else would you find a wife this good? Don't you do something in a fit of pique that you'll regret." I lowered my gaze, avoiding the director's pained eyes. "She is wonderful, but I don't love her anymore. I am set on this divorce." "You don't love her?" Victoria stared at me, her eyes misting over. "When we got married, you said you would love me for a lifetime. It's only been 4 years, have you forgotten? Is it because of Ethan? He was just my first love. I let him go a long time ago. You are the one I truly love." Ethan Moore was the one that got away for Victoria. 3 years ago, Ethan fell ill and returned to the country for treatment. At that time, Victoria and I were newlyweds. To avoid any suspicion, she never once went to visit him. After I was paralyzed, I had even considered setting them free to be together. But every time I brought it up, I would fall silent under Victoria's furious glare. As Victoria spoke, her voice became thick with emotion. "Even when he was on his deathbed, I was still at the auction house, fighting to get that blood ginseng for you. Isn't it obvious who is more important to me?" My gaze swept over the blood ginseng on the bedside table. I knew she wasn't lying. She had put a lot of thought into maximizing its value. Not only did she keep it herself, but she was superstitious enough to say it had to be consumed at an auspicious time. My thoughts snapped back to the present. I spoke faintly. "Thank you for your devotion, but I no longer have any feelings for you. You're lying." Victoria grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. "That time I flew to an overseas auction with a stomachache, you were worried sick. You said the person you owed the most to in this life was me. Don't you remember?" "I don't remember clearly." I slowly pulled my hand away and put the divorce papers down. "Sign it. From now on, we'll go our separate ways and wish each other well." "I won't sign. I don't agree." Victoria's voice was hoarse, but her tone was unyielding. Let me tell you something, Sincere Smith. In my dictionary there is no divorce, only widowhood. She stared at me defiantly, tears falling onto the divorce agreement, blurring the ink into dark smudges. The room fell silent. Finally, my good friend from the orphanage, Jack, cleared his throat and stood up. Big S, we all know you value your wife more than your own life. Is there something you're being forced to do? Meeting Victoria's hopeful gaze, I shook my head. No, I just don't want to be with her anymore. Director Helen couldn't hold back any longer. She came forward and took both our hands. Sincere, I watched the two of you get together. Back then, you were a struggling puppeteer, barely making ends meet, yet you had the wild idea of pursuing Vicky. How many people laughed at you for punching way above your weight? But not only did Vicky not ask for a dowry, she indulged you and let you hold the wedding at our orphanage. Put yourself in her shoes. What other wife would do that when Vicky had a stomachache in the middle of the night, you ran barefoot to 3 different pharmacies? When she was quarantined on a business trip abroad, you stormed into the quarantine zone like a madman to be with her. Have you forgotten all that? I remember it all, I said, exhaling slowly. And that's precisely why I want a divorce. Enough. My father-in-law, Mr. Johnson, clutched his chest, his expression filled with resentment. My daughter was willing to cut ties with us just to marry you, and this is what she gets in return? A divorce? The Johnson family really picked a fine son-in-law. I nodded, my face impassive. Once we're divorced, you can find her a better one. As the standoff continued, the door to the room was thrown open. Victoria's best friend, Louise Hunter, stormed in, her tactical vest still faintly smelling of cordite. Sincere, you rat, Louise slapped me hard across the face, then kicked me. Victoria is such a proud woman, and for the last 3 years she's basically been your full-time nurse. Now that you're better, you want a divorce? Are you even human? Louise was a war correspondent and had always thought I wasn't good enough for Victoria. She'd even threatened to knock me out and ship me off to a war zone. As she put it, if you can't solve the problem, get rid of the person causing it. I stumbled back a few steps and silently wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. Victoria jumped out of bed and stood in front of Louise. He's just recovered. What if you hurt him? Louise rolled her eyes in frustration. He's treating you like this and you're still protecting him? Have you lost your mind? Victoria bit her lip and looked at me, her voice trembling, almost pleading. Sincere, can we please stop this? Whatever I did wrong, I'll change. You like my hair short, don't you? I'll cut it as soon as we get home, okay? You said you don't want to work in an office, that you only love your puppets. From now on, we'll do whatever you want, all right? No need to change. I picked up my bag and gave the divorce papers on the bed one last deep look. It's best if you're just yourself. Let me know when you've signed. Be myself? Victoria whispered with a bitter laugh. You were the one who said you'd protect me for a lifetime, and now you're the one telling me to be myself. The people around us couldn't stand it anymore, indignantly accusing me of being irresponsible. But I had no intention of explaining. I just turned and left. The next day, I returned to the puppet theater and went to the props warehouse I hadn't seen in years. Before I met Victoria, I was a puppeteer, and a pretty skilled one at that. But Victoria said I was better suited to wearing a suit and sitting in an office, so I packed away my puppets and went to work for the Johnson Group, just as she wished. I truly loved her back then. She was my whole world. But it's also true that I want a divorce now. As I was moving the dusty puppets, ready to leave, I heard a few actors from the troupe chatting outside. He married the Johnson heiress, and now he's making a fuss about divorce. Did playing with puppets make him stupid? I know, right? He was in such a bad state, and she still took care of him for 3 years. Not long ago, she even bought that $1 million blood ginseng for him. The moment he's better, he turns his back on her. What a tragedy, what a cold-hearted, ungrateful snake. No wonder they say men stop cherishing what they have once they get it. He'll be crawling back to her through hell and high water, you'll see. I pushed the door open and met the awkward and disgusted gazes of those actors. Who said my husband is divorcing me? Watch your mouths. I turned to see Victoria, arms crossed, leaning against the wall and staring coldly at the two actors. Under Victoria's intimidating presence, the actors didn't dare say another word, shrinking back and hurrying away. I carried on, moving my puppets into the courtyard. Victoria followed me. "Hubby," Victoria's cool gaze fell on me, instantly melting into deep affection. "Don't be angry with me anymore. I made your favorite spicy chicken. Come home and eat with me, okay?" The decisive, powerful head of the Johnson Group, speaking in such a coaxing tone, left the theater staff stunned, but my face remained unmoved as I continued to wipe down my puppets. "I know I have a short temper and sometimes I've wronged you. I'll make it up to you from now on," Victoria said, pulling out 2 plane tickets. "These are for a honeymoon trip to Santorini. You were always so disappointed that I caught a bad cold during our first honeymoon. Let's go again and do it right." The younger members of the troupe gasped with envy. "Oh my God, the Queen bowing down for love, it's so heart-melting. Miss Johnson spoils her husband so much. She's rich, beautiful, and so gentle and considerate. I couldn't even dream of something like this." Amid the crowd's teasing calls of hug her, I tore the tickets to shreds without a moment's hesitation. "Instead of wasting time planning trips, you should sign the divorce papers." Victoria's nose stung. She turned away and took a deep breath, but tears streamed down her face. "Hubby, what's wrong with you? Why do you have to divorce me?" The onlookers were outraged, all speaking up for Victoria. "What the hell is wrong with this guy? What a rat, not even cherishing a wife this good. What a drama queen. He'll be crying his eyes out when he finally pushes her away." I finished arranging the puppets, didn't even glance at Victoria, and walked straight towards the gate. As I passed her, Victoria stared into my eyes, her voice choked with tears. "Sincere, you do still love me, right?" I didn't answer. I just left in silence. 2 days later, I received a sudden call from Director Helen. "Come quickly, something's happened to Vicky." When I arrived at the hospital, Victoria was lying weakly in a hospital bed. The atmosphere was heavy. The moment Louise saw me, her eyes turned red with rage. "This is all your fault, you beast. If it wasn't for that stupid secret recipe for your damn blood ginseng, Victoria wouldn't have gone to that remote monastery and collapsed in the mountains. Do you have any idea that the doctors just found out she has leukemia? When I think about how she was already sick while listening to your crap, I just want to beat you to death. Blood ginseng. Leukemia." I gave the blood ginseng on the bedside table a meaningful look. So, she hadn't given up yet. "Lou, it's not his fault." Victoria quickly pulled Louise back, giving me a pitiful smile. "You were sick before, and now I'm sick. We're even. Doesn't that make us a perfect match? For my sake as a fellow patient, Sincere, will you forgive me?" Before I could speak, the attending physician walked in with a lab report. "Ms. Johnson, the type of leukemia you have can currently only be treated with a bone marrow transplant. But the good news is we've found a successful match for a donor. That person is—" As everyone looked on with hope, the doctor's eyes landed on me. "Mr. Smith." Hearing this news, everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief. Even the hostility in Louise's eyes faded. Director Helen wiped away tears, her hands clasped in prayer. "Thank God. Vicky can be saved. Sincere, you can't throw any more tantrums. You have to take good care of Vicky now." I stared at Victoria's pale face and calmly uttered one sentence: "I won't donate." The room fell deathly silent. Victoria looked at me in disbelief. "Hubby, you—" Louise lunged at me, fists raised. "You heartless, ungrateful snake, you won't even save your own wife. What kind of man are you?" The doctor was also stunned. "Mr. Smith, bone marrow transplants are very safe nowadays, and with proper recovery they don't harm your body." I shook my head and said flatly, "We're about to get divorced. Once we are, we'll be strangers. I have no obligation to donate." Director Helen's face darkened, and she pointed a finger at my nose and started yelling. "Sincere, are you speaking like a human being? When you were rushed to the emergency room, who stood by the door for 3 days and 3 nights? When you couldn't take care of yourself, Who wasn't afraid of the filth and cleaned your body over and over again? If you go through with this divorce, don't you ever step foot in the orphanage again." Victoria's eyes were filled with disappointment, as if she were truly seeing me for the first time. "So that's how it is. In your heart, I'm just a stranger now. You want me to sign, don't you?" She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and her tone turned cold. "Fine. Agree to donate your bone marrow, and I'll sign. We'll go our separate ways and have nothing more to do with each other." I looked at her with a complex expression and nodded. "Fine." As soon as I walked out of the hospital, Jack sent me a message. "Big S, I got everything." I never would have guessed. I was wrong about you. I closed my phone and let out a long breath. The whole truth was finally about to come out. The day of the bone marrow transplant arrived quickly. As soon as I got to the hospital, Louise shoved a soup tureen into my hands with a sour look. "Eat this damn blood ginseng so you don't die on the operating table and blame us." Holding the tureen, the last shred of hesitation in my heart vanished. Seeing me eat every last drop, Victoria seemed to relax slightly. After I put the bowl down, Louise sneered and handed me a divorce agreement. I wrote up a new one. "Sincere, you've hurt Victoria deeply. The least I can do is protect her money. So, you'll walk away with nothing. If you have no problem with that, sign it and get into the operating room." I took it, glanced at it, then looked up at everyone and said slowly, "Who says she's blameless? She cheated on me. She's the one who should walk away with nothing." The air seemed to freeze. Victoria's lips trembled with rage. "Are you insane? On what grounds do you say I cheated?" I gave a cold smile and pointed to the soup tureen. "That blood ginseng is the fox's tail you let slip." Everyone gave me a strange look. Louise looked at me as if I were an idiot. "Sincere, are you sick in the head? Victoria bought that blood ginseng for you. What the hell does it have to do with cheating? If you keep slandering her, believe me, I'll kill you." I looked at Victoria, whose expression had subtly changed, my gaze deep. "This blood ginseng is worth millions. You must have consulted a traditional medicine expert. They must have told you that its effects are to generate muscle and blood, and that it's completely useless for paralysis caused by nerve damage like mine. So, why did you insist on buying it?" Hearing my words, people around us started whispering. I didn't know there was so much to consider when buying supplements. But if the blood ginseng was useless, why did Vicky go to so much trouble to buy it? Victoria heard me, but she just shook her head with a look of disappointment. "Is that your reason for suspecting me of cheating? Sincere, you're pathetic. I don't need to know the specific medicinal effects of blood ginseng. I just need to know that it's good for your body. Besides, doesn't having abundant energy and blood also nourish the nerves?" Her confident response made everyone nod, and they looked at me with suspicion. I was prepared. I pulled a stack of photos from my pocket and threw them on the table. "As it happens, to prevent you from being scammed, I had someone investigate the people you've been in contact with recently. Unexpectedly, I discovered a few things." At this point, I stared into Victoria's eyes and said, word for word, "Room 305 on the 3rd floor. Every day after you came to see me, you would go there and stay for a very long time. And in that room is Ethan Moore, correct?" The photos all showed Victoria entering room 305 at different times. As soon as I finished, Victoria glared at me furiously. "You investigated me?" I pushed one photo after another in front of her. "Your first love, coincidentally in the same hospital as me. Every time you go to see him, you stay for 2 hours without coming out. What do you have to say about that?" In the last half-month alone, there were over a dozen photos. The pictures clearly showed Victoria with a radiant smile on her face before entering the room. It was a stark contrast to the cold expression she wore every time she came to see me. But Victoria wasn't flustered at all. Instead, she coolly tossed the photos aside. "What's wrong with me visiting him? Ethan is my friend, and he's seriously ill. Since I'm at the hospital often, it's only right that I stop by to see him. Ethan has developed depression from his long illness. I'm keeping him company, chatting with him to lift his spirits. Isn't it normal for that to take some time? You conclude I'm cheating just because I'm making a normal visit? Sincere, are you that insecure? How did these 3 years warp your mind into something so dark? Beside her, Louise's face showed contempt. Lying in bed all day is all you can do? Suspect your wife of cheating? Apologize to Victoria right now. Don't make me lose all respect for you, Director. Helen rubbed her forehead, advising me with a headache-inducing tone. Don't be so suspicious. How can you accuse Vicky based on something so baseless? I didn't argue. I just took out my phone and opened up a social media feed. Who said it's baseless? Didn't you post photos together? On the screen, one intimate photo of Victoria and Ethan after another scrolled by. There were pictures of them huddled together, making funny faces. There was one of Victoria wrapping her arms around Ethan's neck from behind, tilting her head and smiling. And there was a close-up of their fingers forming a complete heart, the matching promise rings on their knuckles glinting. Interestingly, all these photos were set to be visible only to Ethan. That seems a bit too intimate. There should be boundaries, even between friends. She's married. Why is Victoria wearing matching rings with someone else? No wonder Sincere is so angry. Seeing her friends and family whispering and the looks in their eyes changing, Victoria quickly stepped forward. Sincere, don't mislead everyone with these out-of-context photos. I already told you, Ethan has severe depression, even suicidal tendencies. His therapist asked me to cooperate with his requests, to help him find his will to live. That's why I took those pictures with him. You even said yourself the photos were only visible to Ethan. It was just a method I was using to help with his therapy. Victoria looked aggrieved, her voice trembling with emotion. Sincere, how can your mind be so filthy? Louise crossed her arms and sneered at me. What century are you living in? Who says a married woman can't have male friends? Victoria was just being kind and helping with his therapy. Can't you be a little more sophisticated? My father-in-law slammed the table. I know my daughter's character. She would never do something like this. If there was something between her and that Ethan, you would have never even had a chance. Understand, seeing the commotion, many other patients' families gathered around. Someone even started a live stream of the drama. And with the explanations from Victoria and the others, the tide of public opinion turned again. She married a guy who's basically a gold digger, and he's slandering her with cheating rumors. This is why women from wealthy families shouldn't marry down. I heard this rat was paralyzed for 3 years, completely dependent on her care. Now he's turning on her and wants a divorce to get his hands on her assets. A flood of accusations washed over the comments section, threatening to drown me. But I remained non-committal, and under Victoria's faintly triumphant gaze, I pulled out my trump card. You say my mind is filthy? Then let's see how filthy this video is. Jack pushed a large screen forward from the crowd, and I mirrored my phone to it. On the screen, Victoria was dressed as a bunny girl, sitting on top of a man. In the dim light, her expression was seductive, her body moving joyfully, her face glistening with sweat. Everyone was dumbfounded. Holy cow, that man doesn't look like her husband. What's going on? Explosive, the CEO of the Johnson Group, is this wild? And doesn't that room also look like a hospital room? Victoria's face turned white as a sheet. She had no idea how I could have this video. She had specifically chosen the middle of the night, but she didn't know that after seeing those photos, I had installed a hidden, inward-facing camera on the door of Ethan's hospital room. Seeing her struggling to hide her panic, I added calmly, "The man lying down is Ethan Moore, from room 302, right below mine, isn't he?" The live stream chat exploded. This is solid proof of cheating, so her husband was telling the truth all along, only one floor apart. Isn't this basically fooling around with her lover right under her husband's nose? This is insane, the video continued to play. In the frame, Victoria suddenly leaned down and whispered in a strange tone, "Soon, Eth, soon we won't need his blood anymore." Enough, the screen went dark. Louise, her face a mask of complex emotions, had pulled the plug. There's no need to show anymore. Let's discuss this privately. Please, give Victoria some dignity. As for the terms, she glanced at the panic-stricken Victoria. Everything is negotiable. I turned to look. Victoria bit her lip and nodded, her face pale. Is that so? But I don't feel like negotiating anymore. If she had agreed to the divorce in the beginning, I might have considered our past and let it go. But from the moment she insisted I consume that blood ginseng, my heart turned to ice. Taking a stack of documents from Jack, I held them up and said flatly, "This is my blood analysis report. I have strong reason to believe that Victoria Johnson plotted to murder her husband, which ultimately led to my paralysis." It was like a thunderclap in the hallway. People were still reeling from the cheating scandal, and now this statement left them utterly stunned. Louise's face turned ashen, and she laughed out of sheer anger. "Sincere, there should be a limit to your embellishments. Victoria is the CEO of the Johnson Group. Even if she has moral failings, that's a matter of your marriage. But why would she try to murder a poor boy like you? For your assets?" I ignored Louise's mockery and replied coldly, "She wasn't after my assets. She was after my blood." In the video, Victoria had mentioned my blood. That, combined with her insistence on buying the blood ginseng, led me to a hypothesis. My blood was very useful. Because of this, I had Jack take a sample of my blood to a medical lab overseas. The results showed that I have the rare Rh null blood type, also known as golden blood, which fewer than 50 people in the world possess. At the same time, the lab came to another shocking conclusion. My blood contained metabolites of a certain toxin, indicating I had been poisoned in the past. This toxin is water-soluble and specifically attacks the nervous system. It was the true cause of my paralysis. The report says I have golden blood, and it also detected a paralyzing toxin in my system. If I remember correctly, in the period right before I was paralyzed, wasn't it you who suddenly decided to make me a glass of warm good-night milk every night? I looked meaningfully at Victoria, who was nervously wringing her hands. "What your paralysis was," Director Helen gasped, covering her mouth. Her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and fury. She had raised me since I was 5, and now, knowing my condition was caused by someone's malicious act, she was about to explode with rage. I patted her hand reassuringly and continued with my theory. "But why would you want to paralyze me?" So, I looked up Ethan's overseas medical records. I stared at Victoria's panicked eyes with a half-smile. What a coincidence. It turns out Ethan has golden blood, too. Nonsense. Louise stood protectively in front of Victoria, her chest heaving with anger. "Just because they both have a rare blood type, you're saying Victoria deliberately paralyzed you? Are you insane? How can you connect two such absurd things? Why don't you go write a soap opera absurd?" I suddenly laughed. But reality is often more absurd than fiction. Looking at the still feigning calm Victoria, I suddenly blurted out, "All that blood drawn for my checkups was used for Ethan, wasn't it?" Victoria's face, hidden in the shadows, broke out in a cold sweat. "I found Ethan's attending physician. This is a recording he secretly made." I took out a recording pen and pressed play. Amidst the crackle of static, a man's voice emerged. "Ms. Johnson, the blood drawn from the checkups is limited. Mr. Moore's rare condition requires constant transfusions. At the current rate, he'll be lucky to survive the month." Victoria's voice followed without a moment's hesitation. "I'll figure something out. I'll get my husband admitted to your hospital. Once he's there, you'll draw blood under the guise of daily tests. Triple the dose." The moment the recording ended, Victoria waved her hands frantically, screaming, "That's fake! It's fake! It's AI generated! You can't believe it!" Director Helen's face was grim, her gaze like daggers on Victoria. "I always said Sincere seemed so weak after he got sick. It turns out you were stealing his blood every day. Who stole his blood?" Mr. Johnson snorted, striking his cane heavily on the floor. "You want to slander my daughter with a recording of dubious authenticity? I won't stand for it." Louise was equally incredulous. "You rat to fight for assets. You hired voice actors and blamed your own paralysis on Victoria. Victoria is sick right now, and you're here making a scene and agitating a patient. What are your real intentions? Our friends and family were divided. Some thought Victoria was ruthless. Others believed I was using unscrupulous means to get a bigger divorce settlement. Watching this chaotic scene, my heart felt as cold as ice. After we got married, I discovered a strange habit of Victoria's. She had an extraordinary obsession with health and would drag me for a full medical checkup every week. And every time, they would draw many vials of my blood. Whenever I questioned it, Victoria would coax me, asking me to indulge her little quirk. After I was paralyzed and admitted to the hospital, the blood draws became even more frequent and intense. Victoria told me she and the doctors were trying different treatment plans to help me stand again. I never doubted her. Not until the suspicion raised by the blood ginseng led me to Ethan's attending physician. Only then did I discover, to my astonishment, that he was the very same doctor who had recommended the bone marrow transplant for Victoria. Sick? A playful smile touched my lips. Your leukemia? That's probably fake too, isn't it? I am a puppeteer, and a skilled one at that. In ancient times, people like us were called puppet masters. After I was paralyzed, I tried countless methods to get back on my feet. All of them failed. In desperation, I used a secret art of the puppet masters and forged myself into a living puppet. I stood up. Countless splints of bamboo, ironwood, and steel rods supported my body, making me appear no different from an ordinary person. When she saw my miraculous recovery, a brilliant smile lit up Victoria's face. She even kissed me deeply, something she hadn't done in a long time. Looking back now, I realized that beneath her smile was a burning greed. Hearing my words, Victoria's tone suddenly softened, her eyes pleading. I really am sick. Perhaps there was a miscommunication between us that made you misunderstand. Whatever it is, can we please go home and talk about it? The live stream viewers, however, were getting restless. Whoa, Goddess Johnson is backing down. Don't tell me she was faking the illness? Cheating, paralyzing her husband, now being accused of stealing blood. Are all wealthy families this messed up? If this is true, this guy has been through hell. We demand the truth be revealed. I flatly rejected Victoria's suggestion. There's nothing left for you and me to talk about. Sincere Victoria suddenly screamed at me, her emotions overflowing. Do you really have to be so cruel? She searched my eyes for a trace of the old affection, but all she found was endless coldness. Under Victoria's despairing gaze, I pressed play on the second recording. It was the same man's voice, but this time it trembled as if he were swallowing nervously. Ms. Johnson, faking a leukemia diagnosis is already against regulations, and you want to do an excessive transplant on top of that. This is no joke. There are standard amounts for bone marrow transplants. There's really no need to use so much. Then came Victoria's cold voice, speaking words that sent a chill down the spine. The fact that he can stand again proves his bone marrow has special nerve-repairing capabilities. You don't need to worry about it. Just drain all of his marrow and transplant it all into ETH. You can report it as a medical accident. I'll give you $10 million and send your whole family to America. When the recording finished, the scene erupted into chaos. Mr. Johnson's face was livid. He slapped Victoria hard across the face. How could I have raised such a monster? You even plan to harvest a man's marrow. You've disgraced the entire Johnson family. The live stream chat was also scrolling frantically. This is insane. This woman is truly vicious. Using a person like a human blood bag, sacrificing her husband for her lover. This is making me fear marriage, and she acted so caring before, cooking and cleaning and giving massages. Turns out she was just maintaining her blood transfusion tool for her lover. Only Louise remained in disbelief, shaking her head and muttering, "Impossible. This is all just his side of the story. Victoria isn't like that. My friend isn't like that." Seeing this, I decided to add more fuel to the fire and give them proof they could see with their own eyes. To see if it's true or not, all we have to do is check if Ethan is in the operating room. With that, I kicked open the door to the operating room. It was empty. All the surgical equipment was there, but not a single person was in sight. The crowd that followed me in stared at each other, bewildered. Louise's eyes lit up, her confidence returning in a flash. She yelled at me, "See? See where's Ethan? You've been making this all up. You beast, everyone has been fooled by you. I'm going to sue you for malicious slander." I ignored her, carefully tapping and inspecting the walls. Suddenly I noticed one wall panel had a slight color difference from the others. I gave it a gentle push. The panel slid open. Inside was a small utility closet. A thin man was lying on a gurney. It was Ethan. Victoria, covering her face, followed me in. Seeing the scene before her, all the color drained from her face. My theory finally has its last piece. I turned to look at Victoria, my eyes filled with a deep chill. "You even hid the person. It seems you really were planning to let me die on the operating table today. To transplant all of my marrow into Ethan, the checkups were to steal my blood. Taking care of me was to ensure the quality of that blood. Buying me the blood ginseng was to nourish my marrow and improve the transplant's effectiveness. Victoria, in your eyes, was I a tool or a lover? The puppet master who controlled puppets ended up living like one himself, manipulated by a false love. The ironic truth was finally exposed to the light of day." Victoria opened her mouth as if she still wanted to defend herself, but I didn't want to hear it anymore. I dropped the final bombshell. "Ethan's attending physician has already turned himself in at the police station. Whatever you have to say, you can say it to the police." Victoria's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor. Beep, 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 a piercing alarm sounded from behind the crowd. A young nurse pushed through, shouting frantically at Victoria. "It's terrible. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Moore's vital signs are gone. He's dead." The last spark of light in her eyes extinguished. Victoria looked up, her eyes wild with madness. "You low-life cur, you pushed Eth to his death. Are you satisfied now? If I had known it would come to this, I should have just put you in a vegetative state." My face was as cold as ice. I spoke softly, "So, you never loved me. Marrying me was just a way to keep Ethan alive, wasn't it?" Seeing my serious expression, Victoria burst into a crazed laugh. "So what if it was? You're just a street performer, a nobody with a worthless life. How dare you compare yourself to Eth as long as he could be well? I was willing to do anything, even become a devil." Louise hugged Victoria, tears streaming down her face, patting her shoulder desperately. "Victoria, how could you be so foolish? Was it worth it, for a man?" All my questions had been answered. I turned and walked toward the exit without a trace of regret. Outside the main doors, police officers were swarming in. 1 year later, I founded a tech company, patented my puppet-like support frame, and launched a line of consumer-grade exoskeletons, giving hope to countless paralyzed patients. I established a charitable foundation, regularly fundraising for the orphanage and providing the children with first-class living and learning facilities. Louise came to my door and offered a sincere apology. It was then I learned she suffered from PTSD due to her experiences on the battlefield. After giving me the signed divorce papers, she left for a remote monastery in the mountains to find inner peace. As for the Johnson Group, it was rocked by the scandal. Victoria was imprisoned and the stock plummeted. My former father-in-law was forced out of retirement, but he couldn't restore market confidence. The company eventually went bankrupt and was liquidated. Not long after, someone told me that Victoria had lost her mind in prison and was transferred to a mental hospital to serve her sentence. On the lawn, she would hold an imaginary needle, foolishly giving herself injections and blood transfusions. She loved with a mad passion. It's just a shame that person wasn't me. I let out the last breath of resentment. Life is like a dream, but in the end, you will find true love.